So I'm Major General Clint Crozier. I'm the Director of the Air Force Warfighting Integration Capability. It's a new organization that the Chief and Secretary specifically directed that we stand up. And the bottom line really is, as the Chief and Secretary looked at the National Defense Strategy and all the future challenges, that we need to be more deliberate about future force design. The way the Air Force was organized previously with our core function leads, we essentially said we wanted to maximize the ability to plan, program, do requirements, capability development within a single mission set. So air superiority or space superiority or agile combat support. And so we were at a stage in the Air Force where we're trying to maximize our abilities within that single core function. And to do that, we set up the core function leads, which in fact did a perfect job of putting focus, energy, and attention on an individual mission or an individual function. But as now we've grown beyond that and recognized the value of multi-domain integration and bringing all of our capabilities to bear in a seamless way against the adversary, we can't plan in individual stovepipes anymore. So the AFWIC was set up to bring that enterprise integration. So from the very beginning of a concept development all the way through prioritized capability requirements, we have that fused or integrated approach from the very beginning. Yeah, the total force integration has been key. As we stood up with our 44 people for IOC, initial operating capability, about a third of them were actually from the total force. And really the value of the total force, as many people know, is the ability to surge and augment. So our call went out that we needed experts in key mission sets that could rush to the sound of the guns, if you will, and help us with immediate need to stand up the organization and get our roles and responsibilities started. And so the total force was critical to us getting up and running with the augmentation and accelerated personnel that they brought to the organization. But as we look forward, it's going to be even more important, because nothing we do as an Air Force, nothing can be separated or disparate between active guard and reserve. The only way we're maximally effective is if we integrate as a total force from the very beginning. So we have agreements with the Guard Reserve to integrate full-time men and women into the AFWIC, so they will be part of the very early stages from capability development, concept development, and the future way that we'll fight. They'll be integrating and bringing their expertise to bear and making sure that we've got all of those key relationships nailed down before we even begin the planning process. And that will ensure that we're a single total force from beginning to end. Everything we're doing is tied to the NDS. The National Defense Strategy lays out a number of key operational challenges, key focus areas, and key problems. And the Secretary-in-Chief remind me almost every time I see him that AFWIC's core responsibility is to figure out how we're going to organize, fight, and develop our future force specifically to achieve those challenges and focus areas in the National Defense Strategy. So I tell our team every single day, that's the totality of our job. Help the Air Force figure out how we transform from the Air Force we are to the Air Force we need to be to execute and fulfill the National Defense Strategy. We haven't had the right focus on deliberate design up front and to the left in the timeline enough to really be able to have a positive effect on the POM. So by moving the horizon further to the left and doing deliberate force design to the left of the plan and the program, we'll be able to drive all of those things. So when we bring forward new concepts or capability development priorities from the AFWIC and they're approved by the Chief and Secretary, that becomes directive guidance directly into the POM to ensure that they are programming for those concepts, capabilities, and force structures that we've developed within the AFWIC. So we will partner very closely with the planners and the programmers. The idea is the force we need is sort of an ongoing assessment. In other words, as we see new and emerging technologies, as we see threats from the adversary change, as we see the security environment changes, as we see updates to the National Defense Strategy, we need to continually reassess every one of those. So we've done the homework now, and the Secretary released that, to figure out the size of the Air Force we need to be able to achieve our objectives in the future. But again, constant reassessment. If the environment changes, the threat changes, new and emerging technologies change the way that we will fight as a future force, then AFWIC will continually help reassess what that force structure is required, and that'll be reflected in follow-on decisions by the Chief and Secretary. as AFWIC completes its design work and that's translated into a future force, you will see new capabilities, new platforms, new systems rolling out 3, 5, 7 years from now that were specifically and deliberately developed and designed by AFWIC to meet that purpose of the highly contested environment. So airmen should know that the Chief and Secretary are serious about deliberately planning for the future in an environment different than the one that we've been living in the past, and they're focusing their effort on making sure that we plan appropriately so that we can fight and win in that environment. So the AFWIC is in a business of doing new business. One of our mantras that we like to say is real change requires real change. And the Chief and Secretary have chartered us with bringing real change to the Air Force. So that requires we think about warfighting differently, we think about the future differently. That requires we have a better handle on emerging technologies and new warfighting concepts and capabilities. And so we are very much trying to build an organization with innovative, creative thinkers who can break out of the paradigms of the way we used to do business and really help us envision the way the Air Force needs to fight 10, 15, 20, 30 years from now. And so our call goes out that if any airmen are inspired by the idea of being part of architecting and designing the future Air Force, what a powerful opportunity to be part of real change. Specifically involved in guiding, directing, and planning for the Air Force of the future. That's a powerful legacy to leave behind, and we're looking for airmen who are willing to take on that task. So we've already built a plan, and the Chief has approved it, that we want to develop a joint cell within the AFWIC. The Army and the Marine Corps already have an AFWIC-like organization. The Army has the ARCIC, the Army Capability Integration Center, and the Marine Corps has the MCCITC, the Marine Combat Development Command. And so those are sort of sister organizations with the AFWIC, and I've spent a lot of time dialoguing with both those organizations, but we believe we can't be fully effective in integrating our capabilities unless we have representatives from the Army and the Navy and the Marine Corps inside, again, capability development and concept development, so that we're building that joint flavor and joint focus from the very beginning. Most important piece is the Secretary of Defense has laid out the vision for our future for the Department of Defense, and the Chief and Secretary have taken that on. Not a day goes by in the Pentagon that somebody doesn't recite the fact that the Chief and Secretary have told the Air Force we will be aligned to the NDS, and frankly it's an alignment stronger than any alignment I've seen in my 30 years in the Air Force. So everything we do in the Pentagon is focused on achieving the goals and objectives of the National Defense Strategy, and that's why the Chief and Secretary are so supportive of this new construct, because we have to deliberately ensure that we're building the Air Force we need and not simply operating with an Air Force we might randomly inherit.